You know, as a video game content creator or a YouTuber, sometimes it can be difficult to find inspiration. The right idea could be a mile away. Writer's block, they call it. You can just sit there waiting for inspiration, for the right idea to come along so you can finally make a good video. In cases like this, the YouTuber may look online for inspiration, play an old game to create nostalgia, or maybe even buy a new game just to get in on the hype. Either way, the YouTuber has to do something. It's not as if something will just fall into their lap. You can't just sit there hoping that someone in the video game industry will say something so stupid that you can make a whole video on it. CEOs, presidents, people in high up positions just don't do that stuff, especially not publicly. Sure, Todd Howard said that Shattered Space would have been a masterpiece had buggies been added, and Emil Pagliarulo said that fans would rather build shacks than enjoy a good story in a game, but that's Bethesda. They're built different. You can't just sit there and think, oh, wait, I guess sometimes it does just happen. The article title: EA thinks Dragon Age the Veilguard would have done better if it were live service. Alright, let's read it. Electronic Arts CEO Andrew Wilson recently spoke on an earnings call about the underperformance of Dragon Age the Veilguard, which reportedly reached 1.5 million players. This was apparently around half of what EA was projecting, but given the game was in development hell for a decade and was a sequel to a game that came out before millions of potential players had fully developed frontal lobes, it wasn't too surprising. Wilson, however, is convinced the reason the long-awaited RPG sold fewer copies than the company wanted is that it wasn't live servicey enough. In order to break beyond the core audience, games need to directly connect to the evolving demands of players who increasingly seek shared world features and deeper engagement alongside high-quality narratives in this beloved category, Wilson said. Dragon Age had a high-quality launch and was well reviewed by critics and those who played. However, it did not resonate with a broad enough audience in this highly competitive market. This kind of blinder worrying isn't new for EA though. The company notoriously claimed single-player games were finished, then changed its tune when one of its own studios had a recent success story in Respawn's Star Wars Jedi games, despite its competitors releasing critically and commercially successful single-player games the entire time. Dragon Age the Veilguard sold 1.5 million copies, and Kingdom Come Deliverance 2 just sold 2 million copies in less than 2 weeks, just FYI. So, is Wilson right? Was Dragon Age the Veilguard a tweak away from becoming a masterpiece? Had we had the option to share our experiences online, would it be considered one of the greats? Well, let's get into it, and I'll explain why EA just don't get it. Quick side note, if you are new here, I would ask that you consider subscribing to my channel. I cover video game topics, focusing primarily on RPG games, what Dragon Age the Veilguard was supposed to be. Anyway, let's get into it. So first of all, Wilson gave his reasoning on why Dragon Age the Veilguard was unsuccessful. He states it was just missing the live service option, which is the only thing holding the game back. The truth is far from it. Dragon Age the Veilguard had many issues, but in order to understand the main ones, you have to know what type of game it was supposed to be. A role-playing video game. A role-playing video game is a genre where players assume the roles of characters in a fictional setting. Now, there are two main types of RPG games. One, where you design the main character yourself, like Skyrim and Baldur's Gate 3. And then there's RPGs where the main character is set, like Kingdom Come Deliverance with Henry and Geralt in Witcher 3. Either way, these games follow a certain pattern that separates them from other games, like Call of Duty. First of all, these games often involve player progression. This means that the player will often receive XP for playing the game and they'll level up, gaining new abilities and improving their stats. A good example of this is Skyrim and Kingdom Come Deliverance. Throughout the game, players would do certain activities, for example lockpicking, blacksmithing or archery, and as the players perform these tasks, they would gain experience to a stat related to it. So you pick enough locks, you level up your lockpicking stats, making future lockpicks easier to pick. I should have picked better words. Get it? So, the player is rewarded XP points for doing those tasks, and the reward is an easier time with those mechanics, but this also meant that your overall level would increase. As you leveled up, your character would become stronger and potentially unlock new abilities. This creates an addictive cycle because essentially at the start of a game, your character is level 1 and easily defeated. You can't go to certain areas or tackle certain enemies or bosses, but as the player dedicates more time to the game, eventually they level up and become so strong that they can one-shot those same enemies. It's a fundamental aspect of RPG games. It's why they take so long, and they reward the player for investing the time. That's one element of an RPG. The second aspect is providing the player with choice-driven narratives, with branching storylines influenced by the player's decision. Witcher 3 and Baldur's Gate 3 are fine examples of this. A true RPG lets the player make their own story rather than play through a predetermined plotline. Many times in games like Witcher 3, you'll be presented with decisions to make that directly impact the outcome of that quest, or even the world overall. By having these choices, it gives the player a strong sense of freedom, and makes them feel like it really is their game. It also gives them great replay value. Games like Skyrim have very limited decision making, but they still have some, as it's an integral element within an RPG. The third element is exploration and quests. Games like this often have huge open worlds to explore, which are full of side quests and dungeons to explore. Although many of these games have a main storyline, players are often encouraged to get out there and explore. They're rewarded with side quests and activities. Again, this plays into the whole freedom to create your own story. And finally, good RPGs can have party-based mechanics, such as managing companions, strategic combat, and relationships. Although some RPGs don't have this, it is a staple in some great RPGs like the Mass Effect series, Baldur's Gate, and ironically enough, the old Dragon Age series. But anyway, the main point is RPGs offer freedom. Unlike linear fixed narrative games, these games are for the creative. They are really told where to go and what to do. The game's world is their canvas to paint their own picture and write their own destiny. The main quest is often ignored and the player is encouraged to create their own. Side content is more important in an RPG than a main quest a lot of the times. These type of games attract a certain type of fan, myself included. Fans of RPG games have certain expectations that must be met, things that they want to see. Oh, and note, all of these games are offline. So, up until this point, the Dragon Age series had followed this formula. It had open worlds, it had a leveling system for you and your companions, it had strategic turn-based combat which encouraged thought and calculation, it had strong decision making that had huge impacts on the game's world and its people that resided there. It had open worlds with side quests attached. These games were exactly what fans of the RPG genre would want. It pretty much ticked all the boxes. Now, you might say the previous games were not at the level of their competitors in the same genre, but you could see that they were at least trying to make an RPG game. Now, fast forward to Dragon Age the Veilguard, and this game was not the same. First of all, the game went through development hell and switched genres many times throughout production. It was first to be an action game, then an online service game, then something else, and it went back and forth. Finally, they settled on what we got. Longtime fans of the Dragon Age series and RPG games in general were disappointed as the game shifted away from traditional RPG elements in favour of a more action-focused experience. Past Dragon Age games had strategic, pause-based combat where players controlled their full party. Dragon Age the Veilguard focused on fast-paced action combat with only one controllable character. Rather than strategic combat, it was hack and slash. Players also had no control of their companions. The game looked and played more like God of War than a typical RPG. You couldn't loot items, health was in green jars scattered across the map. The open world was anything but open and had many tight linear corridors. Decision making didn't really have much impact for the majority of the game, and as a result, it lost its identity. This was not a role-playing game. It was clear that the game was made for another audience completely. It was more of an action linear fast-paced game. I'm not saying that's wrong, just that it's not what fans expected. Dragon Age was supposed to be an RPG game, ticking the boxes of the requirements I specified earlier. By changing the formula completely, fans who had grown to love the series' previous entries no longer enjoyed this new formula. It wasn't an RPG game, and it wasn't a Dragon Age game. It was something totally different, and as such, those fans mainly turned their back on it. And to be fair, the game had been clearly designed for a new audience. The graphics were more cartoony, the writing was more basic and on the nose, everything was streamlined and puzzles were incredibly easy. RPG fans love their games to have real depth and deep mechanics so that they can customize their experiences. Stats, percentages, buffs, debuffs, RPGs are quite complicated. This game was the opposite, with no challenges at all. Now, I could go on about the DEI aspect, the cartoony graphics, the ridiculous $250 million cost of production, the terrible writing, and the boring enemy variety. The game had a lot wrong with it. But the main thing is, it betrayed its own fanbase and the RPG fanbase in general. We love Skyrim, Witcher 3, and Baldur's Gate 3. This game is none of them. So although Andrew Wilson will say it's because the game wasn't live service or modern enough, the opposite is true. It was too modern, and online gameplay is really the opposite of what fans of old BioWare games, and RPG games in general, want to hear. All of these great RPG games over the years, Mass Effect, Witcher 3, Skyrim, Kingdom Come Deliverance, all of these games are offline. None of them offer online gameplay. This really is not the solution. Think about it like this, Skyrim is one of the most successful RPG games of all time. People still play it today. If online was the answer, why don't they all go and play Elder Scrolls Online? That's essentially Skyrim, just online. Why isn't the Skyrim franchise dead by now? Why don't people talk about the Elder Scrolls Online as much as they talk about Skyrim? Because it isn't an RPG. They had to strip away a lot of the RPG elements from that series in order to make it online. Because that's what happens when you make a game online. Less freedom. It's no longer your world to change, it's a shared world with a set path. An RPG is an offline game. Call of Duty, FIFA, and Fortnite are very popular games online. None of them are RPGs. Fans of these type of games want to have an offline experience. Now, EA have stated for years that offline gaming is dead, that we want everything online, and offline games are nothing but the past. And the gamers don't want complicated, slow, in-depth RPGs but fast-paced action games. But just look at Kingdom Come Deliverance 2. A slow, methodical RPG game. Just sold 2 million units in 2 weeks. Baldur's Gate 3 won Game of the Year in 2022. Witcher 3 in 2015. In fact, out of the last 11 Game of the Year winners, 10 of them were offline. One of them was Dragon Age Inquisition. If online gaming is so desired and the be-all and end-all, why don't they clean up the awards every year? Because, as Kingdom Come Deliverance 2 and Baldur's Gate 3 and many other games have shown us, offline RPGs are still in huge demand. They are still the most revered and appreciated games. These AAA studios keep telling us online or simplified games are what we want, but when it comes time to vote, offline always wins. Funny that, eh? But you know what online does win at? Money. It makes far more money than any offline game. Fortnite is a free game, but it has microtransactions. It has made $40 billion since its release. Elder Scrolls Online makes $15 million a month. So although the fanbase of Skyrim is higher than that of ESO, the income generated by the smaller fanbase of the online games is higher. And you know who are the most notorious for squeezing money out of their fans? EA Games. First of all, let me tell you about FIFA. I used to love this series as I'm a huge fan of football or soccer. Anyway, I loved the offline manager mode and I used to play it religiously. But then, in 2009, EA invented the Ultimate Team mode. It's an online part of the game where you can play with friends. Your team is built around players you get by purchasing packs of cards. The team with the best players often wins, but the problem is, cards are random, so you never know which one you're going to get. But the more packs you buy, the better chance you have of getting a good player. These are known as loot boxes, and it's a form of gambling. EA have made so much money from this game mode that my beloved offline manager mode stopped receiving updates completely. At this point, it hasn't been updated in almost 10 years. EA don't care about that mode anymore, it's all about the Ultimate Team. The average FIFA player is well under the age of 18, so they're pushing gambling on children and getting them hooked. It's morally wrong, and we've seen so many sad stories. I've seen some people spend thousands of dollars just to get one player card. But hey, it makes EA money, right? Or look at The Sims 4. This game has 18 expansions. 18! And all of them are the price of a full game. Do you know how much money that is in total? I'm screwed because my wife loves The Sims, so sorry if this hits a little close to home. But they literally sell all these add-ons for full price, which should have been in the game from the get-go. Like, this is stuff that could have been in the base game, but they figured they'd just make you pay for it later. And not just in 1 or 2 sets, but 16. Imagine if Skyrim came out and the map was empty. Oh, you gotta buy a pack for the towns. Oh, you need a pack for the dungeons. Oh, you wanted NPCs? Quests? Well, you need to get the expansion packs for that. And what's even worse is that these Sims packs don't even work. Modders have to fix them all because they're broken. Kingdom Come Deliverance 2 just arrived, and the amount of content in that game is staggering. Hundreds of quests, 2 world maps, many minigames. There is so much jam-packed into one game for one price. When you look at studios like Warhorse with Kingdom Come Deliverance, Larian with Baldur's Gate 3, CD Projekt Red with Witcher 3, these studios and their games give you so much for one price. No gimmicks, no microtransactions, just a good, solid game. They over-deliver, and they're so passionate about their fans. They want to deliver the best product possible. They want to give more to their fans by choice. They don't have to make their world so big. They don't have to add so many side quests or have so many branching decisions. But they do. And they put it in the game from day one. These studios care about their fans and their reputation, but mainly, their main goal is to create the best game possible. EA have a different outlook. They don't care if their games are glitchy, buggy, or if it receives criticism. They care if it makes money, which unfortunately, they do. But to the point of this video, Dragon Age the Veilguard didn't fail because it didn't offer live service features. It failed because it was a poor game that lacked in many areas. It failed because it was completely different to what fans of the Dragon Age series and RPGs in general want to see in a game. It failed because you somehow spent $250 million on one game. It failed because it was not the type of game we, and I say we as an RPG fan, wanted to play. It was a letdown for us. If EA and BioWare were to announce that they would return to more of the elements I mentioned earlier that are expected in an RPG game, we may give them another chance. But if it's more of the same, and now talking about online, we're most likely going to give it a skip. I'm sure someone will like it, maybe it'll be the next Fortnite and it'll find a new audience, and that's fine, but it won't be this fan base. And by Andrew Wilson even announcing this, or coming to this conclusion, it shows not only a huge lack of awareness of the game's shortcomings and criticisms, but it also shows that he has no idea what a Dragon Age fan is. That's sad. If you were a BioWare fan and you loved the Mass Effect series and Dragon Age series, if you still have some type of faith left that the new games will compete with the older titles, you're more strong-willed than me. Because if The Witcher 4 came out and looked and played like the Dragon Age the Veilguard, and then the CEO said it was due to a lack of online service aspects, I would consider that series no longer applicable with my tastes. EA don't get it. They don't know how to make a good RPG game anymore. They don't know what fans of that genre want anymore. The only thing EA know now is how to make as much money as possible, and that unfortunately is live service games. If AAA studios could start focusing on making a great game rather than trying to be the next Fortnite, maybe they wouldn't be in this position that they find themselves in. So many game studios saw the success of Fortnite and they're addicted to trying to be Fortnite. But there can only be one Fortnite. Those that copy it, 9 times out of 10, they end up like Concord. Meanwhile, as Kingdom Come Deliverance 2 has just shown us, when you give the fans a true, well-written, thought-out game, and you trust your fans to be intelligent enough to figure it out, you tend to be quite successful. And when you make the number one priority, making a great game, instead of trying to make a cash cow, you tend to make more money anyway. Things are not going well at EA at the moment, and they have no one else to blame. But as Wilson has clearly stated, EA just don't get it. Anyway, that's it for this one, but what do you guys think? Do you think Andrew Wilson is right? Do you think that the addition of live service would have saved Dragon Age the Veilguard? Or do you agree with me? Do you think my sarcasm is too much? Let me know your thoughts in the comments. If you enjoyed the video, please consider giving it a like, and if you're new here, please consider subscribing. I'm Av Gaming, where we do video game analysis, identifying what makes great games great and what could make good games great as well. Thanks for watching. Av out.